All right. Thank you all for being here today, and we're very happy to have our panel here today, and we're going to talk about brand storytelling. Many of you know storytelling from Once Upon a Time when we were kids, but let me give you a little background story on who our panelists are. Starting from the far right, John Baez, he's SVP, Head of Brand Solutions and Strategy at Fuse Media. He's a 25-year media and brand marketing veteran. Currently, he's part of the executive leadership team at Fuse Media, the diverse-owned and operated global leader in inclusive entertainment. As SVP and head of brand solutions and strategy, he oversees senior-level business intelligence and alignment across linear TV, CTV, social, and experiential verticals. Okay, recently he oversaw the diversity and inclusion-driven branded content partnership with Doritos, late night snacking, which I think you're going to talk about. Yep. And he's about to launch a year-long curatorial partnership with Procter & Gamble's Widen the Screen Black Female Filmmakers campaign. Okay, thank you so much for being here. Tara is a marketing leader with over 17 years of experience delivering top and bottom line results for iconic brands such as Chips Ahoy, Ritz, and Sour Patch Kids. Tara has unleashed growth for these brands through strategic partnerships, equity building, innovation strategy, and P&L management. Her passion lies in delivering consumer-first, purpose-driven marketing that unleashes sustainable growth while also growing and developing future leaders in the organization. Over the course of her career, she has many roles across marketing, general management, and innovation. Currently, she's the VP of Ritz and Snacking on the go for Mondelez International. In this role, her focus is to restore Ritz's iconic brand status and category leadership while also accelerating a critical segment in snacking. Before that, Tara was the lead of the Mondelez cookie portfolio, where she turned around the Chips Ahoy business, making it top 10 loved snacking brand by Gen Z. We all love chocolate chip cookies. Tara also has led several innovation teams focusing on launching both close-in as well as platform innovations that expanded brands into new adjacencies. Prior to Mondelez, she worked as a consultant in organizational strategy for Accenture. She earned her Ross School of Business, her MBA at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan, and she got her MBA, her BA from Rutgers. So we have a Rutgers alum here on the stage.
How are you?
Which we always love. Also, Jason Etter, he's VP of Sizzle Content Bacon. And as VP of Sizzle, he brings over 15 years of growth, leadership, and marketing experience across multiple industries. A glutton for punishment, he also has 2 master's degrees hanging in his office. The first for information technology leadership from LaSalle University, and the second in digital marketing from Rutgers University. He likes to talk about his 2 daughters, and he's crushing it through their natural instinct to lead through kindness, compassion, and belly laughter. He's also okay at storytelling, which is why he's been asked to be here. So we're actually going to start with John. And we had a conversation earlier where we talked about some examples of brands you've worked on and the stories you've told and how you've made them personable for your consumers. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Just so you have a little bit of background, I actually, it's more like a 30-year veteran, but I didn't catch that in my bio write-up. But I've started in entertainment marketing. I worked for MGM. There's an MGM person I got to talk to at some point today who I think was talking earlier. But way back in the 90s, right? And so I've had a lot of experience at MTV, Viacom. I ran 2 consulting firms, and so I've worked with hundreds of brands over the years. But most recently, I was brought on as a consultant to do business expansion and innovation at Fuse Media, which is the leading American-based, minority-owned and operated diversity content company. And we're really proud of that because we are really kind of, we're walking the talk, and we really are unique in a space where 100% of our content includes people of color, 100% of our content includes sexual expressions and gender, expressions. 50% of our crew and content creators are women, and we have a lot of initiatives throughout our company that really kind of like push forth this portfolio of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I think that one of the ways we were able to work with clients and provide a unique opportunity is to create authentic stories based on what they're coming to us to solve the problem for. So with Doritos, who has been I think they've been an advertiser with us for about 10 years plus. They wanted to really reimagine like who they were speaking to and how they were speaking to people. So they had a late night snacking initiative. They felt that they really wanted influencers, content creators, and people authentically engaging with their products. So we were able to work within our portfolio of talent from our shows, from our talent network, from a variety of our different verticals to launch a series of branded content initiatives that were really targeted based on what they wanted to do, but filtered through AI research and who our audience and their intended Gen Z audience wanted to hear from. So we worked with Tim Chang-Resu. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a really famous content creator. He's a comedian. He's on one of our shows called We Need to Talk About America. But we plucked him out of that world and said, how can you help Doritos? So this is like something that's very different. Before it used to be brands would just want to be integrated into a show. Super complicated, really very effective, but really takes a long time to do. What we did was flip the switch. We flipped the script on it and said, why don't we bring our talent to our clients and to our brands, right? So in this case, we were able to custom craft an entire set of branded content pieces that would not only live on our traditional linear and cable channels, but also across our connected fast television networks, which we have like a huge portfolio of, but also building things specifically for TikTok, it's building things specifically for Instagram. So it was 360-degree marketing. And in a way, it's not just building one solution, but it's building an entire universe of them. What's interesting about it is that I actually worked on Doritos many years ago. In like 2007, I was at Viacom, MTV specifically, and I just started there. I was brought in to be a content innovator there. And my boss said to me, sell them the VMAs. I'm sure everybody knows what the VMAs, right? The Video Music Awards used to be much bigger. It's still pretty big. And I said, I don't think they want that. I think they want to make content. And he's like, that's not what we do here. So he's like, you got to sell them on that. I said, all right. So I went and I presented the VMAs, and they were like, no, we're not interested in this. Thank God I had an idea up my sleeve about creating an entire branded series with them. And that launched an entire division at Viacom where we did branded content for brands. And so I think that's one of the ways that it's been full circle for me to see how, telling true stories, authentic stories sometimes runs the gamut of delivering on one platform effectively. And sometimes it's about offering a different point of view and taking a risk and sometimes kind of going against the grain of what, they might think they need to do. So it's a fluid world these days. It's trying to deliver against a lot of things, and you've got to figure out the right mix in order to make it, connect with audiences.
It's interesting when you said that they wanted you to present one thing, which you knew was wrong, and then you presented. What gave you the courage, or how do you approach that in life? Because students need to know, you hear a lot about do as you're told and don't go against what you're being asked to do.
Yeah, I reward rebellion, so anybody who wants to do things the opposite way, you should probably come talk to me. I just believe that, trends and waves are cyclical. Don't forget to enjoy surfing. If you're on a wave, you might as well enjoy your job. Be creative. I love the expressions of creativity. Stay nimble. Always think about what you're doing, but also have 2 or 3 other ideas. I believe in the rule of threes. My team can't come to me with just one solution. They have to come to me with 3 pretty distinct ones. And then we all figure out, like, okay, well, what's the best lead? But then we have something to back it up, because I've had meetings go sideways with clients probably every day of my life. But it's about being nimble and being not rigid in a way that you can't hear people's critiques. I think that resilience is extremely important in marketing. You have to be resilient and have tough skin, but also have a point of view and have a voice. I think that's why I'm really proud. Like, I actually got out of the industry for a while. I was a college professor as well, and ran a couple consulting firms, and I took time out to work in food insecurity and solving problems on a local level, and still do that. But I got brought back because, as a Latino, as a member of the LGBTQ community, I was given a voice at this table, and I really felt that I had the opportunity to go and say something and also open the door for other people. And so it's really, I'm very proud to work at a smaller company than maybe I used to, but I can make a lot of impact. And I think that, that resonates in authenticity and intention when you're talking to a brand, because they see that you're actually what you say you are.
Thank you for sharing that. And we do hear the word authenticity a lot. And I'm just wondering, Tara, when you approach Ritz, when you approach chocolate chips, what is it you feel you bring to the market, or how do you do your job in the way you come in every day?
Yeah, so I'll start too with just like a little bit of a kickoff. So as you mentioned, I was in your shoes many years ago. Maybe some of you weren't even born yet, but I can relate. And I started my career I graduated Rutgers, econ economics degree. Worked in consulting, and I always knew I was going to go back and get my MBA. I didn't know where, I didn't know when, but the time had come. I had an opportunity to go to Michigan, so I went there and got my MBA. And as I was there, one of the things that always interested me as well was psychology. So why does someone do what they do? And I actually had like a point in my career before I got my schooling, like I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a psychiatrist, and that's what I wanted to do. But I ended up taking the economics path and the business path, thankfully. But that understanding of why someone does something, is really important as you think about storytelling. So the example I wanted to give was actually an example for Chips Ahoy. And it's interesting that you bring up Doritos, because Doritos is part of this story. So Chips Ahoy is 100 years. It just celebrated a 100-year birthday last year. And if you think about brands, like, these are living, breathing things, guys. Like, there's some brands that have been around for 5 years, and they're just as, living and breathing as a brand that's been around for 100 years. And so it's very important to understand why a consumer buys your brand. And so at Mondelez, we have something called Brand Foundations, and it's basically like the living, breathing document of like product truth, consumer benefit. I'm sure you guys have seen these things, all the way up laddering to your purpose. Why, what you stand for and what you're going to do from a purpose perspective. And when I got on this business back in 2019, I was the VP of all of cookies, right? So this was my biggest business. And if we didn't turn this business around, I really probably wasn't going to be successful. And so we had a team of people, working on Chips Ahoy. And they first came to me with the brief. And the brief was, we want to be the Doritos of cookies. And I was like, for Gen Z consumers, by the way, you guys, most of you guys. And I was like, what does that mean? And so they gave me the whole spiel of what it meant. It meant we want to be, Doritos in salty snacks. It's bold, it's vibrant, it's flavorful, it's energetic. And by the way, Gen Z loves it. And it's, billions of dollars worth of, market consumption. And I was like, okay, all right, show me what you got. Show me, your new packaging that you're going to put out there, your new innovation plans, if this is your strategy. And every time they would show me something, they'd be like, yeah, we want to launch this package, but consumers would reject it, like all the time. Be like, I don't like that new packaging, you're shouting at me. We were literally putting things into consumer insights testing, and it was failing, like continuous failing. And I'm like, guys, there's something wrong here. This is not what Chips Ahoy is. So we actually took a couple steps back, and we did a ton of research. And we did an audit with our agency. We did this like big brand barrier study, which was like a 300-page document at the end of the research. But what it boiled down to, and probably something you guys can relate to, is Chips Ahoy is a chocolate chip cookie. At the end of the day, a chocolate chip cookie is a chocolate chip cookie. And so whether your mom is baking it or you're having it, whenever you're having it, like, It delivers a certain product truth. The why you have a chocolate chip cookie is for comfort. You can have an entire sleeve of Chips Ahoy and probably feel satiated inside, also mentally. So you're satiated physically and mentally. Whereas we would ask them, we said, all right, well then why is that different than an Oreo? Why do you go into your cabinet and pick out a Chips Ahoy versus why do you pick out an Oreo? And they said an Oreo is a treat. It's sweet. I can't have an entire sleeve of Chips Ahoy. And we also started to get into at that time, well, what's the tension? A good story and a good brand foundation needs a tension. And what we learned at that time, and this was when, there was some school shootings going on. There was a lot of, social media conversation and suicide, with high school students who, again, was our target. And these guys and girls would come home and come to our groups and say, I'm stressed. I see these things in social media. I see these things on the news. The world is crazy. And when I get home from school, I just want like a minute to just have some comfort. I'm going to do my homework and then I'm going to go do activities. I just need this minute. And that was the role Chips Ahoy played in their lives. It was not about being a Dorito. So if we were about to throw in, the kitchen sink and do like, here's the kitchen sink Chips Ahoy, they're like, we don't want that. We just want your basic cookie and we want it to be as delicious as possible. So as we thought about the storytelling, we thought about how that went through the entire marketing plan. It impacted our creative, our creative brief is starting. It impacted our creative. It impacted our innovation strategy. It impacted our go-to-market strategy and like where we showed up, why we showed up. So it really was the foundation for everything we did. This conversation is about storytelling. So I will kind of get into one quick story about the storytelling because we're living in a world where you're telling your story on so many different vehicles, right? You have all your social media platforms, you have your TVC, which, at that time we were doing TV for Gen Z, which finally I was able to convince people to stop spending any money on cable TV, please. And now it's all connected TV and Instagram and social and digital. But, at the time we were still in TV, so we had a TV commercial, we put that out there. It didn't do well, obviously, because nobody was watching it. But we did something in social and on Connected where we did a series with our character. His name was Chip. This guy's been around forever. We've reinvented him multiple times through, the 100 years we've been, a brand. And we did a bunch of different, sort of assets that we put onto Instagram. And basically Instagram's algorithm basically kind of fed based on your interest, your spot. So we had one that he was all drippy and he was into hip hop. We had one that, he was a skater and he talked about, being a snack, and being a snack meant you looked good at the time. Like it was like all this like teen lingo, that our agency obviously helped us with. And, these assets were best in class on Instagram. And they were, something that was leveraged to kind of tell other brands how to deliver a relevant message in a way that's going to break through. Because it wasn't hard hitting, like, I want you to buy something. It was just trying to make someone happy and comfort them on their social media feed, and it just made people laugh. But there was one asset that actually was very, very polarizing. It was the drip one. Because people were like, it was like this song and he was singing it, and people were like, why is this cookie guy, whoever this cookie guy is, in hip hop and talking about drip? This is so stupid, it's so corny. But then there was the other half of the people who were like, no, why are you hating on Chip? You're like, it's just a cookie, he's just, trying to make you laugh. And, we had to make a decision. My ABMs were coming to me saying, should we pull this? What do I do? Should we stop? And I was like, let's see what the sentiment is. We worked with our social media partners and we said, give me the numbers here. Like, what's the data saying? And the data was literally 50% for this asset and 50% against this asset. So we ended up keeping the asset running and decided not to pull it and leaning into it a little bit more and rolling with that story. And so we hired like a hip hop fashion designer from, New York, and he did a bunch of Chip's drip. And anyone who was a positive person in our feeds talking about it, we like did a surprise and delight and sent them some stuff. And then we also put it on our own channels to sell it, to people who wanted it as well. So we ended up leaning into it, and that's something you guys are going to have to figure out as you start to tell stories. Like, some aren't going to land well, but some are, and you're going to have to kind of be brave and lean into these things, over time. So that was long-winded, but that was my story.
That's an interesting story. Now, you mentioned the fact that your sentiment told you it was 50-50.
Yeah.
What made you go toward the drip instead of away from it? And in fact, you said you leaned into it when it was an equal decision. What made that? How did you come to that decision?
So it wasn't easy, and I will tell you, a lot of people were saying, no, we got to stop this conversation, especially some of the more junior marketers on the Chips Ahoy team at the time. And what I said was, let's get some verbatims, like let's read the quotes, right? The quotes were, the quotes that were for it were like, this is awesome, his trip's drippy, like this song is so, cool. The ones against it were just like kind of haters hating, right? It was a negative hating in this polarized sort of like environment. The people who were positive were then kind of commenting against the negative people. And so we felt like there was actually more positive energy than negative because of the conversation that was happening. So we literally went through the entire conversation. The other thing is Chips Ahoy's purpose, like I said on those brand foundations, like Chips Ahoy's purpose is, it's called Here for Happy. It's to bring more happiness and comfort in a very sort of, stressed out world for teens and, young adults. So if you think about this ad, it was all about just making someone smile. Okay. It wasn't about trying to be something, Chips Ahoy isn't. And so what? Maybe we don't go into that, realm anymore. But the whole point was just to make you happy. So that's why we kind of lean into it. It was kind of anchored more in our purpose. And we felt like, even though the data was 50-50, the sentiment felt more weighted in a positive manner.
Okay. So a deeper dive helped lead.
Exactly.
That. Okay.
Now I will tell you, there were other times where we made missteps and we pulled content because, we made a misstep, but in this instance, we leaned into it and actually put more money into it, and started kind of pushing it out more and did the Chips drip. So it's close.
Thanks for sharing that. So Jason, I don't want to frighten you. Why don't you give us a little background on yourself and your company, and then talk about what storytelling, how it fits into what you do for a living.
Oh, first of all, I'm starving. So
We'll get you some food.
I want to have a cookie and I want to have some Doritos. And I think, I work for a content organization called Content Bacon. And what we do is we actually work with a lot of organizations that are approaching the startup phase where they're probably at 20 people to 50 people. And then our sweet spot are organizations that have a small marketing team. Maybe it's 3 people, and there's probably about 200 people headcount-wise at the organization. That's kind of our sweet spot. We also work with agencies as well. And what we do is tell people's story. And I think rather than going into specific examples, I've been listening a lot today, and I want you all to sort of think about when Caroline was talking about what she did and why she started her organization. And when you actually got it, the value of getting those containers and getting them back, and her simple message of like, please don't take it home, please just put it back in the right bin. I feel like everyone sort of nodded their head and they understood it. And that is storytelling. Like that is like there was an emotional trigger where you just said, I completely understand what she's doing. I understand why her business exists. I want to be part of that. I know I felt that way. And I felt similar when you were talking about coming home after a stressful day, and having some cookies with my mom. That sounds nice. That sounds really nice. That is storytelling, and that's what we do, right? That's what all of us are trying to do. And some organizations that you'll work with after this is either going to be inundated with an amazing amount of resources and metrics to help you get to that story. And some of you are going to have yourselves and the mirror that you look at and say, okay, self, we're going to figure this out together. And either of those have pros and cons. And what I would say, though, is that if you can align yourself with the why of the organization that you are advocating, whether you're working for an agency or working directly for a brand, understand why it exists. And then from there, understand who actually uses it. And make sure that the why that they exist and who uses it are aligned. So many organizations are a mismatch. There's a very, very clear philosophy from the C-level perspective of like, this is why our organization exists. but then you find out that all of the consumers of that product or purchasers of that product are using it for a completely different reason. And you as a marketer, that's your challenge, is to bridge that gap and figure out between those two how to uncover that moment when you're at home and you're dunking it into your milk or oat milk or soy milk or whichever milk you want to be milking your cookie with.
That's interesting. When you talk about you've got to be able to understand the why, when you work with the client, and I understand you consult with the clients, how do you bring that out?
The easiest question is to ask the founder why they started the organization in the first place. And if they had a magic wand of what success would look like, describe that. Most founders or CEOs would then begin to talk for about 45 minutes nonstop. And that's where you're going to really find the nuggets that are really good. From there, talk to the sales team. They're the ones talking to the people that are really thinking about this stuff. And so be friendly with the VP of sales. Because if you're not, you're probably going to get fired. But understand what the SDRs are doing when they're prospecting. Listen to those calls. If your organization uses cool tools like Gong, listen to everything. See what's being fed, and that's where you'll uncover more of those nuggets.
Okay, thank you. Now, I want to go back to you, John. Would you give us one example where you feel like you used something you learned from the audience or from the consumer that helped you launch an idea, get a project going correctly?
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the things that I used to work on the Subaru business, and I have two Subarus. Strong supporter of the LGBT community, and, I gave my money where, I thought it was deserved. And I worked on MTV at the time, and we had a show called The Buried Life. It's a long time ago, so you maybe don't remember it, but it was very, very much in the pop cultural zeitgeist at the time. And it was like these four intrepid young guys who were doing really cool things, helping communities, like really doing interesting things. It was a perfect match for Subaru, but I didn't know a way to kind of integrate into them, right? I was like, how do I connect these cool four young guys that are in their like early 20s with like car purchasing, right? Like the divide is big there, right? 21-year-olds don't usually buy new expensive Subarus. So I actually went to the brand and I said, listen, let's sit down. Let me talk to your intelligence division. How do you cultivate your consumer 5 or 10 years in advance? What do you need to do in order to condition someone to buy you when they can't afford you? And so that allowed me to really sit down with them and kind of create a multi-year plan for us to kind of inculcate and create a vernacular around Subaru, its values, its very purpose-driven mission. I mean, Subaru, out of most of the automobiles, is very, very much ahead of that type of marketing, and it always has been. And so I was able to kind of at the point, Gen Y it, we were at the Gen Y stage at that time. And so it allowed for me to really listen to the brand, and they loved that. And I said, I'm going to build you a show with those guys where they get in a Subaru and we can do all this really cool stuff to help communities. And they loved it because it allowed them to use the car as a hero. And I don't think I would have been able to get there if I didn't have the vulnerability to say, I don't know how to solve this problem for you. Tell me what your research is telling me. I think that I don't work at a brand. I've worked for hundreds of brands because I work at a media company. So I have to put on my Mondelez hat, my Pepsi hat, my, every other brand hat, plus run my own brand because I do the brand marketing for Fuse, and I did it at MTV as well. And one of the things is like you just have to lean into collaboration. I think people are afraid to not have their idea come to life. The reality is that the best ideas get done by committee and whittling away, throwing out the bad ones, listening to other people. And I often don't come up with the ideas for our brands anymore. The teams that work with me do, and then they come to me and say, what do you think? And we'll talk about it. I think if you can do that at the brand level or at the agency level, and you have trust, like there's a great book by Pete Buttigieg, whether you like him or not. It's a great book called Trust. And it really kind of exemplifies the risk in taking someone's trust and believing that you can partner with them. And those are the best ways to deliver for a brand because they feel like you're an ally. They're not going to be, betrayed by you. Like you're listening to them. Like listen as much as possible to get their goals accomplished and then do it in a cool way.
That's good advice. Tara, in terms of trust and being true to your brand, what kind of examples do you have that can speak to that as well?
Yeah, I mean, oh, turn this off. Sorry, guys. Oh, there we go. I mean, I think I just want to kind of build on what you just said. Like, I just think that you have to listen to the consumer. It is so easy to say, I know more, I know this. Like, the Chips Ahoy example is one. I made it sound so easy, but like, that had already been sold into leadership. It was on documents that they were going to be the Doritos of cookies. I had to like really sell that in and like, try to get the ship to move based on what the consumer was saying. We have something similar going on Ritz right now where, a lot of people think that, Ritz lost its share leadership, right? So Cheez-It beat Ritz in share leadership. And everyone's like, there's no way we can reclaim it. And I'm like, first off, we have to. Like, Ritz is the original cracker. Like, we can't be okay being the second, in the market. That's now based on, I don't know if you guys are learning, but like, there's a lot of inflation going on. What the street is looking at is share. And if you're not gaining share, you're not winning share, you're not winning. So we need to be putting that out there. And when I actually looked at, sort of, why does someone like Ritz? We did the same thing. We went and talked to consumers. Why do you like a Ritz? Why do you like a Cheez-It? And the reason why they like a Ritz is because it's about caring. You do something with a Ritz. A Cheez-It, like, I have kids, so when they come home and I don't want to like deal with them at that point, or I can't because I'm working, like, I'm like, go, here's the Cheez-It, here's the goldfish, whatever, go and just watch a show. I'll meet up with you in a little bit. But if I have time, I'll take out the Ritz and I'll spread some peanut butter and we'll talk about the day at school. And there's a moment that you create. And so that's what consumers want from us. But what we had been doing, well, prior to, the prior team, they had been launching chips, like, again, the Doritos. So, because they felt like they were losing all their volume to salty snacks. So they're like, okay, so instead of being a Ritz, we'll just launch a bunch of, Cheez-It type products, and they had this crisp and thin thing. They completely failed. They killed our margins. It just was. Now we're dealing with getting them out of the market. But you have to stay true to your brand and who you are, especially when you've been around for so long. Trying to be someone else just because they're gaining your volume is not going to solve the problem. You need to meet an unmet. You need to understand what your product does, and then anything you do needs to either meet an unmet need or continue to get in more people who are just not buying your brand at this particular point. So I just can't echo that enough. Like, you have to listen to the consumer, whether it's the product quality all the way through your communications. Like, they come first.
And when, excuse me, and when you say listen to the consumer, what you pointed out was something I never thought about, that goldfish, you just pop them in your mouth, you give them to the kids, they can go sit wherever they are. But you have to be interactive when you've got a Ritz, because you've got to do something with it. So that's even getting into how is the product used.
Exactly. And a lot of people, when, we were starting this role about 2 years ago, were like, but you need to make it so you don't have to do something with it. Yes, we have part of our portfolio that you don't have to do anything with. We have Ritz sandwich crackers. We have Ritz Bits, which are these little Ritz, with cheese and peanut butter. You don't have to do anything with those. Those are kind of the same. But with the Ritz core, I felt, and I still feel, we should lean into that. We should lean into the fact that you have to do something with it. I think Andrea said about isolationism and loneliness. That's the tension that we're playing up against, is that people feel alone. They feel isolated coming out of the pandemic. So how do you bring people together? How do you drive more caring and engagement in this world, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's a Super Bowl party or, Thanksgiving's coming up, your Thanksgiving party, whatever that is.
Yeah, I think, Tara, that's a great point. And I think it's maybe the best point that's been brought up today is that it's that human connection. Our world changed after COVID. Everybody was working from home. People aren't going out as much. Like, the experience that you have is kind of like tighter and more sacred. And I think that in a way, like, when a brand can lean into that, like you have, and kind of create like an organic and like tactile experience, it really kind of has like tremendous like brand loyalty, because it's not just something you can get, it's something you engage with. And I think I love that. That's great.
Yeah, real quick on that too is I think that the most successful campaigns that I've seen, and look at yourself and go through your own feeds, is it's when the brand is not the hero. right? You are the hero. The consumer is the hero. And when you see those messages where, oh wow, like I totally relate to this situation. I see, oh, there's the conflict that person's having. I have that conflict too. Oh look, they're eating something that's cool. Oh look, their life is better now. And the product itself only had a very small piece of that story, but that emotional connection was outstanding, and that's the stuff right there. That's what you're good. That's where you're going to see a lot of. It's probably one of the best examples is any commercial from Apple. They, although the products are there, and what you see is when you see people creating amazing things, and there just happens to be an iMac. The glow of the iMac screen is there, or they're producing some sort of amazing musical ensemble, and you see that there's an iPad in the distance and that kind of thing. They're putting the actual consumer of the product front and center versus the actual product that they're trying to sell, and that to me is like that's the amazing, beautiful experience. Like when Caroline was talking again, I want to use her a perfect example. She wasn't selling plastic tubs of things for your organization to use. She was offering a way to keep the world alive and stop creating landfills. That's the connection that she was going after. That's why she's, I think, how did she phrase it, if you remember? She's selling not a product, but a package.
A package.
A what? A program. There it is. I love that. She's not selling plastic. You know how easy it would be for her to say, we sell plastic tubs. Right? And she never even brought that up. In fact, she was anti-plastic. She looked at all these things and said, you guys are horrible people for doing that. No.
We're trying to do better. I wanted to tell her that I poured my water into my
See?
cup, my
There you go.
sustainable cup.
Storytelling in action.
There you go.
You guys have given some very interesting comments to us about your approach and how the brand is not the key in the story, it's the people who are in the story. Can you just, for the students in the room, because everybody's always looking at how can I be better, how can I get in your position one day? What kind of advice? I heard listening. Any other advice or add on to that?
Have a point of view. Be aware that you are not a robot. I love AI. I love data. I love research. They are not human beings. You all are. And you have like an emotional ability to pivot even faster than the most advanced technology. The human eye cannot be replicated, really, at least in my opinion. It has a soul, it has a feeling, and when you bring that passion into your creative problem solving, you can use technology to leverage it. You can base your emotional decision. Like I love this idea of the risk you took to go with the drippy, because that took risk. That's a great marketer, because even if you failed, you learned from it. And like every experiment that you do is not going to pan out. So learn from the failures. I mean, I've had 2 businesses fail on me. I sold one at a profit. I learned more from the ones that I didn't sell because I knew what not to do the 3rd time around. So don't be afraid of failing. And I think also lean into your own point of view.
Yeah,
I love that.
I'll build on that because I was going to say, like, you guys are students now, but you're going to be a student for the rest of your life is what I'd highly recommend. Because, I think someone said it up front, and I think this entire summit is really about, marketing is changing, and it's not going to stop changing. I started 17 years ago. I remember, like, the ABM, you're like, okay, this is the data that I have. This is the, marketing communications plan. I have this much money. I'm going to run it in linear TV, and like that was it. Then 10 years later, it was like, oh shoot, social media. Like, what do we do with social media? Let's bring Gary Vaynerchuk in here and help him. Like, he'll teach us everything. So that is not changing. It's just going to get worse. I mean, not worse. It's just going to get more complex. And AI is, the big thing now. So I would just say, like, constantly be a student. I think that the more, I'm sure you guys are interview prepping and it's like, what's your favorite brand or, who's marketing stuff well? I think you should always have that point of view, like throughout your life. Like, and then the other thing is I gave you a successful story, but I can give you 10 failures that I've done. Like I've launched innovation platforms that had millions of dollars of waste. I've invested capital that, completely failed. Millions of dollars of capital that, the platform's gone 3 years later. So, and the reason why is because we didn't listen to the consumer. The consumer said they want more cream in their product. We couldn't afford to put more cream in the product. So we said, we'll give them less cream. They're going to love it anyway. It failed. So, I could just give you so many of those examples. The other thing I would say, and it's kind of building on what you were saying, it's like I got this promotion early on in my career, and I had this VP. His name is Carlos. He's now like the CEO of Kraft Heinz. He was very, very inspiring, right? And he and I, worked closely together because I had like lost the middle manager for a little bit of time, so I was able to like really connect with him. Anyway, fast forward, he gets me this promotion. I'm now like the senior ABM on Triscuit, and I'm like, oh wow, this is great, But I started to get like quiet. And I guess I wasn't like as confident, coming into this new role that I had, my voice was kind of getting quiet, especially with the agencies. And he literally pulled me aside and he was like, Tara, I gave you a seat at this table, and I don't understand why you're not using it. And if you don't start to use it, like I can give it to somebody else.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, and it was nice. It wasn't like mean how he said it. He was just like, "What's going on with you? You are really good at this creative stuff. I need you to speak your mind and speak."
Were you afraid?
I felt, my confidence was a little bit like not as strong because I was like a new senior ABM. We were spending all this money. There was a new, director coming in, and I was like, well, they clearly know more than I do, and. They didn't know any more than I knew. You know what I mean? So it really kind of was that kick in the butt, and I'll never forget it, to say, if somebody gives you a seat at the table, use it. You have an opinion, and you're there for a reason. So that's the advice I give you guys as you kind of take on your careers. But have fun, be agile, take the turns, take the, risky moves, and, it'll all work out in the end.
Yeah, and on top of that, don't close the door and don't not give other people a seat at the table too. That's really important. That's like that's the DNA of my company, which is how do we put more voices out there, listen to more. It's not just you, it's an entire chorus of people, and everyone's got something to say. So just always help other people along in their careers. I've had amazing mentors. Sound like you had a great one as well, and they've never shut the door on me, and the ones who did, you learn a different lesson from that. Yeah. But the ones that, keep it open, they really do change your life.
The one thing that I'll add is when you start out, in whether it's an internship or it's you're doing some sort of marketing on any level, be aggressive with being crystal clear on what success is for your role specifically.
How do you find that out?
Well, that's a great question. I would, if you're working with a VP of marketing or if you're working directly with a founder, depending on who you're talking with, whoever your direct report is, have a very, very real one-on-one, heart-to-heart about what success looks like. Because it's way too easy in a creative space like marketing to go all in the wrong direction and then find out 6 months later that you're on the chopping block. So I would really especially if you get hired into I'm sure you've seen the Spirit Halloween marketing manager costume, where it's like 18,000 years of experience and 400 different roles that you're actually accompanying. That exists, right? So that's where you need to, if you're talking directly with a founder or a C-level or a VP, get crystal clear clarity. What do you want me to do? Why did you hire me? And what does success look like? And that's where you need to spend all of your time and focus. Because without it, you're going to do great things for the wrong reasons.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. So you walk away with, you need to listen. If you're in the room, you belong there. So understand that and make sure that you speak up. So thank you all.
Let's put a round of applause for the panel. We're going to take just 2 questions, quick questions.
Hi. How should a brand recover from a backlash?
Backlash. Okay, that's tough.
I think you have to be authentic. And I think just as I don't want to simplify this, but brands are breathing things, like I said. I often think, how would I, respond to something I did wrong, or something, someone didn't agree with. And so first, to me, you have to be authentic. And so I'm going to use an example. Let's just say, the country is so polarized right now. Let's just say, someone, I'll use Oreo. Oreo has been supporting LGBTQ community since, they celebrated their 100-year birthday when they did the Pride Oreo. They have a right in that conversation. They are allowed to speak that conversation. And they've put ads out. They've done a lot of work in that space. And it's authentic. And so if there is a backlash, and there always usually is someone who's got a comment about it, they're authentic. They can speak there. We actually had an incident on Chips Ahoy where, the brand tried to, on Mother's Day, back in like 2019 or 2020, we posted an ad by somebody on RuPaul Drag Race. And, the agency that posted it, because it was an ABM who posted it on Mother's Day, we don't vet all of these things all the way up the line. The agency didn't vet his history, this person's history. And the post was polarizing because he was saying, anyone could be a mother, and I'm a mother to, all my, people out there who support me. And so that was controversial in its own sense. But what had also happened was that person had also had a very derogatory post like 2 weeks earlier on their own social channels that the agency didn't vet. So when the question came to me, do I pull it? I had to say, yes, you have to pull it because you didn't vet the talent. And Chips Ahoy doesn't really have to play in this space. It's not really a space that we have credentials to play in, right? We're about happiness, So I think you have to just be authentic to who you are as a brand. And you do have to make sure that you're stepping in the right territories, and you're not just showing up just to show up. You have a right to be in that conversation, so you don't have the backlash.
Yeah, only one other thing I'll add to that real quick is that, I think it's very clear that anything could become a crisis very quickly. And it's really on the organization to make sure that they have an understanding of what needs to happen internally first before anything else. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations still today haven't thought about that. And so these mistakes are going to happen, right? Or missteps are going to happen. Maybe that's a better word. And you need to have an internal team that is, and if the organization you work for does not have an internal team to accompany a crisis or a situation like this, then maybe be the advocate to say we need to create one. Because otherwise, it's gonna fall on you, and then you're probably gonna be out of a job.
We got one question over here, one more.
Hi, I'm Matthew. I was so excited to hear you start to talk about Chip. One of my roommates, for months, he would pull me aside, show me a video of Chip, like, standing in a basketball court, go, don't you hate this guy? And I would just laugh at it. And I know, as a sensitive young man, I avoid negativity at all costs. But I know we had so many conversations about Chips Ahoy because of him. Is there anything to an innocent controversy that, as a marketer, there's inside you're like, I like that. Like, there's conversations drumming more than like a completely positive but uncontroversial campaign would be?
I think that the world is that today, and social media has fueled that, right? Like, everyone has an opinion, and you're allowed to have that opinion, and you should be able to voice that opinion. So in the instance where we talked about, I don't know if the basketball one I know too, but the Chips drip, like, it was innocent. It was so just, no one meant any harm by it, but some people just really reacted negatively to it. Like, why is he talking about this? And why is he singing this song? But it was great for the brand. Like, it ended up, really fueling a lot of engagement in social media. So to me, sometimes I talk to my team about, it depends on the investment, how much risk you're going to take. So, we just launched a new campaign for Ritz over the holidays, and we're spending a lot of money. So we're probably not going to take a major risk in terms of the content that we're putting out there. But these were assets that were meant to be part of the engine, so to speak, in social media. And the more engagement those assets get, the more, money they get put behind it by our digital agency. So that negative conversation just fueled more of that getting pushed out, which is why the question was, okay, the engine's working for us, but it's mixed. So you're just going to have to make those choices, I think, and be brave, because negative sentiment is not terrible.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that everybody, is now living in a day and age where you're no longer like a passive participant in any of your media. Like, we're a mobile first society, right? Like, all of our content, all of our feeds, everything is on our phone. See all everybody's phones, right? And you're part of the dialogue. And so whether or not a brand wants to have, good or bad controversy, you're engaging with them no matter what. So you can't avoid it, really. Like, it's almost like if it's bad, it can turn out good. And sometimes when it's good, it's not that great, because nobody really cares about the topic you're talking about. But at this point, I think the risk and the sort of the uniqueness of it was what made it buzzy. And I think that try to kind of lean into those kind of things that are buzzy and also positive. I mean, there's there's a kind of a happiness to it, which I loved. Yeah, it's amazing.
Let's put our hands together for the panel, please. This was awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.